What's up, guys, and welcome to the show. So I'm going to try to do this weekly news, Lucha Libre news show. I'm going to try to do it every Sunday. Like I said, I'm going to try to. Hopefully I can. It's pretty much a show where I talk about Lucha Libre and what's going on with certain companies, different kind of news that's coming out of each and every which end. But I wanted to talk about something before I delve into some news, and that is uproxx.com, uproxx.com. Now, they actually got something pretty important wrong when they said LU talent is blocked from working with Ring of Honor and WWE and limited to what they can do in New Japan. This is actually wrong. I was able to get my hands on a few in-ring talent contracts. I was also able to get a statement from Robert Rodriguez as well in regards to this, and that's actually not right. According to Robert Rodriguez, the Lucha Underground talent, in-ring talent especially, is, as long as they show up to tapings every week for the duration of a season, so 20 tapings, etc., however long the season is, as long as they show up to each of those tapings ready to compete, then they're fine. But once the season is over, they're actually free agents. They are not under contract with Lucha Underground, so they're free to go wherever they want. Whether they want to go to compete in Impact, whether they want to go to compete in WWE, Ring of Honor, New Japan, whether they want to go compete in Mexico, whether they want to go to compete, wherever they want to compete, as long as they return to Lucha Underground for the following season. And of course, if a season is not filmed that year, then they are of course released from their contract, and then they can just free to do whatever they want. So to say that they're actually limited, they're actually not. Even if you read Lucha Underground talent contract, it even states that as well, that there's no limitations to where they can work once the end of a season comes. So once the end of a season happens, they're free to work with zero limitations to where and when, as long as they return back to Lucha Underground at the start of the next season. So that's actually not true because, like I said, according to Rodriguez, they're free to go with zero limitations according to their contracts. If you read them, their contracts have zero limitations to where they could work when they're not working for Lucha Underground. So I don't know where they got their information. I do apologize, I'm not really feeling too good today. But I don't know where they got their information from, but of course that is actually not true. And another thing that they actually ended up getting wrong was of course the funding thing, which we'll talk about right now. So there was a big question mark on whether or not Lucha Underground Season 4 was going to happen due to AAA pulling out their partnership with Lucha Underground, which meant a huge chunk of funding for that was now gone. Robert Rodriguez, who owns El Rey Network, who does produce Lucha Underground, stepped up and said he would supply some of the funding for it. Not all of the funding, but a good portion of the funding for Lucha Underground, which meant Lucha Underground was forced to make cuts to make up for that lack of funding. One of the things that they made cuts on is, of course, the in-ring talent salaries, which is definitely a big reason why two particular Lucha Libre Underground brothers are calling this their last season in Lucha Underground. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, so Robert Rodriguez, according to Robert Rodriguez and Lucha Underground, he didn't supply the full funding that AAA supplied, but he did supply a good chunk, like I said, which is why they have to do budget cuts like they do, because the funding wasn't in full, but it was a good portion of it as well. Now, of course, that leads a big black cloud for Season 5, because Robert Rodriguez will not be doing, or has stated that he's not going to be able to fund that type of a portion for Season 5 as well. So we're going to either see lower salaries even yet for season 5, or we're not even going to see a season 5 if they can't find an additional partners for that as well. But and also in news, who's not coming into Lucha Underground and who's leaving Lucha Underground is, of course, we're not going to see Prince Puma due to his contract signing with the WWE. Prince Puma is no longer a part of Lucha Underground. Rey Mysterio has announced that he is retiring this year and he wants to live out the remaining portion of his wrestling career in the WWE before he retires this later on this year. So he's not going to be returning to Lucha Underground as well. Sexy Star has also announced her retirement from the Lucha Libre world. So she's not going to be a part, and she is not a part of Lucha Underground this year either. She announced her retirement at the end of last season after her big match with Tyra. She then turned around and unretired after she signed with AAA. That, of course, she had a short-lived career in AAA before they let her go, and then at which time she turned around and she announced that she's retiring from the Lucha Libre world. She wants to focus all of her attention, of course, onto her professional boxing and a professional MMA career. So she is doing that now, and she's taking retirement from wrestling as well. Due to also Rey Fenix and Pentagon Jr., they both work big in the independent circuit as well. But one big news is that Rey Fenix and Phoenix and Pentagon Jr. were actually let go from their AAA contracts, which means that this is why they had such a big name change, because AAA, of course, owns the name of Pentagon Jr. and AAA owns the rights to the name of Phoenix. So that's why they both ended up going for the name changes. Both brothers ended up recently signing contracts, tag team contracts for the Crash Lucha Libre. And they have both announced that this is their last season with Lucha Underground. So even if there is a season 5, Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix are not going to be a part of it due to their signing with the Crash Lucha Libre, and due to budget cuts within the Lucha Libre world as well. So they both have announced that they're not going to be joining back into Lucha Underground, which is going to be sad to see. But of course, Lucha Underground has also brought in a couple of stars as well. One of those superstars being, or one of those wrestlers turned luchadors, I guess you could say, are Jack Swagger of WWE, former WWE wrestler, is now wrestling in Lucha Underground under the name of Jack Hager. He had a match during a couple of the tapings, which he did pretty well on, not too terrible. I don't really want to spoil any matches for anybody, so I'm not going to talk about who he had a match in and if he won or not, but he did really well in there. He's doing very good in Lucha Underground, as well as we've seen a couple other big names come into Lucha Underground for the season, that's season 4 as well. So there's that, and of course you still have everybody else who's involved in Lucha Underground. Vampiro's still there, even though he announced his retirement. He's going to be retiring from in-ring action this year, but he's still, of course, actively working as commentary for Lucha Underground, and he's still working behind the scenes of AAA and Lucha Underground as well. So he's still a part of that. Matt Striker, everybody's still a part of Lucha Underground, excluding those few in-ring talents. The tapings of Lucha Underground is set to premiere on early June 5th, I believe was the date that was told to me for the release date, which I'm really excited for. Like I said, season 1 was awesome, season 2, season 3 was phenomenal. Season 4 should be insanely good as well. I'm not going to be missing anybody except for Prince Puma, I think, and Star. That's the only 2 people, myself, I'm going to miss. But I think I think season 4 is going to be really well. I mean, the set still looks the same. The temple, as they still call it, still looks the same. Everything still looks the same. Everything looks really good. So I think it's still going to be a really good season. I don't, other than people stepping out and, like I said, people no longer there. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I don't think it's going to really affect anything, not too majorly anyway. But also in some news, I mean, there's pretty much nothing really to report in Lucha Underground except for that, because of the simple fact that I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to tell you guys who's winning what. Although I will say this, that Cage ended up having a match with Pentagon Jr. for the Lucha Libre title. So definitely watch, definitely keep out for season 4, because there's definitely some pretty awesome matches like that coming up, and that was an awesome match, so I definitely want to check that out. And anyway, that's just the little rant. I guess I'll just do like I said, the kind of little weekly news type, like weekly little rant type things on that. But anyway, keep it locked to El Rey Network for Lucha Underground. Anyway, guys, that's the bed. Like, comment, subscribe.